I remember a visit with my parents to a chief rabbi in Belgium. I was bored. I was a little kid, and the chief rebbitzin handed me a book of biblical stories. As I opened it up and started paging through it, there was kind of a story with a picture, and there was this fantastic, crazy story that I couldn't believe was true. Um, this was a story about a man who was going to curse the Jewish people, and then his donkey stopped and talked to him, and he spoke back. And honestly, I'd never heard the story, and I can explain. But you see, um, Balak always falls right in the middle of the school holidays. So, it's like at school, I'd never learned that parasha during the normal course of classes. And the entire story was new to me, and I didn't believe it. And in fact, I remember running into the room with my parents who were sitting and talking to their colleagues and pulling my mother, and saying to her, "We gotta leave. They've got non-genuine biblical stories here. Maybe it's for the New Testament. It's not Jewish, and we can't possibly have tea in this house, but they've got, unbelievable stories." Reality is, there is a story in Tanakh, the story of Bilam saddling his donkey and going off on a journey, and then indeed being stopped halfway by an angel who is telling the donkey to stop, and there is a very angry Bilam who is got the stick or the whip or whatever it is, and is whipping his donkey. Of course, Bilam had been hired by Balak to curse the Jewish people. Didn't quite turn out that way, but on his way, of course, there was this very interesting interaction with his donkey, and that was the part that I found totally incredulous. But here's this: the name of the portion, Parashat, is Balak, and Balak um, is a strange name for a parasha, considering that he was a really, really wicked guy. The Medrash Tanchuma says that he was one of the greatest haters of the Jewish people in history, consumed by hate that was totally irrational, as his territory was in no way threatened by the Jewish people, and he didn't have to get involved in a fight that wasn't his. In fact, the word Balak, did a bit of scratching around, and came up for what the significance of that name Balak is. And this is what the books told me, that name Balak comes from the root biblical world. Actually, when I first saw it, I was a bit devastated. That it's a very bad word. I would have read this without vowels as Bulka. And having lived in South Africa now for some 38 years, 39 years, 38 years, um, I've grown to become quite fond of bulka as a traditional food, and indeed was associated somehow with you know something negative. When I looked up the verse in the source, it's not bulka; it's actually red volka. Volca, and in its how the 24th chapter of Isaiah begins. Behold, God will strip the earth bare, and the word uvolca, and lay it waste. So that word balak, which is from that root, so it's about destruction. It seems to be a rather negative name to give to a parsha, and why would we, why name a parsha? Um, and we'll see in a moment that it's kind of a very, very important portion with content that is essential and central to our faith. Why name a parsha like that? with the name of a man called Balak. If we look at, I mean, I know we've just been through Korach a couple of weeks ago, and he was not a good guy either. But there's a lot to be said in defense of Korach. We're not going to, go back there now. But Korach aspired to great spiritual achievements, and Korach had the merit of his sons repenting. And in our shiur 2 weeks ago, I was quoting verses, rather Psalms, that the sons of Korach had composed, and so Korach himself had the merit of having children who were psalmists. And in fact, there is a view that Korach himself, as he was kind of being swallowed by the earth, repented a little bit too little, too late. Maybe not too little, but definitely too late. So there's a lot to be said in defense of Korach, and particularly as he was a man aspiring to spiritual greatness. And at one point, Rashi quotes this Moshe Rabbeinu saying, I want that too. You want to be Kohen Gadol? So do I. So there's a lot to be said for the portion of Korach, who was a Jew, who was a Levite, and who was a respected person in the community, having a portion named after him, with whatever content. We can always look at some redeeming features in Korach and explain that that's why the portion is named that way. Not so with Balak. Balak, as I said, wicked, Gentile, who hated the Jews passionately, and got involved in trying to cause them harm through spiritual channels, not even through traditional warfare, but realizing that traditional warfare probably isn't going to work, and we'll look at a quote from Balak in a moment where he explains why he wants to go the curse route rather than trying to fight a traditional conventional war with them. So why would we have a portion? Particularly as some of the core fundamentals of Jewish faith are contained in the parsha. And let me see if I can get that text up for us. But here is a prophecy of Bilam. Of course, we all know what happened. Bilam's going there, he's trying to curse. It's not working. And every time he speaks, his mouth opens up, and it's God putting words of curses, which actually turn out to be brachot. And he said, Ere'enu velo ata. What I see for them is not yet. Ashurena velo karov. I'm looking at them, but it's not soon. I'm looking now, says Bilam, at a prophecy that's going to happen actually, many, many centuries later and at the end of time. And he says, a star rises from Jacob, a scepter comes forth from Israel. It smashes the brow of Moab, the foundation of all children of Seth. And of course, that actually means all of us, because we're all the children, descendants of Seth, who was one of Adam's sons, born after the very tragic murder by one brother through the other, of one brother by the other. Sorry. So this is a verse that really talks about what's going to happen eventually when Jacob's descendants, Israel, meet up with Moab, and of course Balak is a king of Moab, and there's going to be a star from Jacob, a scepter from Israel, and he continues. There we go. Edom will become a possession, Seir a possession of its enemies, Israel being triumphant. So that's the prophecy of Bilam, but that prophecy is explained to us as actually a prophecy about the end of time. So there is Rambam, Maimonides. This is a quote from the Laws of Kings. The Laws of Kings, where he talks not only of kings historically, but also of kings in the future. So in the Laws of Kings, there are 12 chapters. The first 10 deal with kings throughout the history of the Jewish people, and the 11th and 12th chapters talk about King Moshiach, the future king of Israel, and the era of Mashiach, what that will be like. So says Rambam, reference to Mashiach is also made in the portion of Bilam, who prophesies about two anointed kings. The first one is King David, who saved Israel from her oppressors, and the final anointed king who will arise, that's Mashiach, save Israel in the end of days. So here we have it. I see it, but not now. That was a reference. This is a reference to David HaMelech. I perceive it, but not in the near future. This refers to the Messianic king. A star will go forth from Jacob. These are the verses we were just looking at. This refers to David, and a staff shall arise in Israel, refers to King Mashiach. I think I have just doubled up here. Crushing all of Moab's princes refers to David, as in second book of Samuel's, he smote Moab and measured them with a line. Decimating all of Seth's descendants refers to the Messianic king, about whom in Zechariah, it prophesies he will rule from sea to sea. Edom will be demolished, refers to David. And Seir will be destroyed, refers to the Messianic king, as prophesied in Ovadia. So let's not get too technical in terms of how he interprets this, but clearly what we have in this parasha are the prophecies about Mashiach, and there's not much written about the end of time about Mashiach in the Torah. There are a couple of references, and this is a fundamental principle of Jewish faith that we believe. Ani ma'amin b'emunah b'viat Mashiach. I think it's the 11th of the 13 principles of faith, as Maimonides puts out, and that fundamental faith, where in the Torah is it found? In the chapter that has for heading Balak, wicked, evil, Jew-hating Balak. So how do we reconcile this? How do we understand that the proportion is titled Balak? Of course, Balak's name is there at the beginning of the portion. It begins Vayar Balak ben Tzipor, and Balak son of Tzipor. So yeah, it's appropriate from that point of view. Could easily call the portion Vayar, although there is one already called Vayera, so it would have been a bit confusing, but the names of the parashas are descriptive. So if the portion is called Balak, it actually kind of gives us an overview of the entire portion, and we need to understand how the name fits the content. For a fleeting moment, you had the answer on your screen. It's a mystical concept known as Ithapcha. And what is Ithapcha? Ithapcha means transformation. It means that a concept is taken and changed completely to its almost polar opposite. And really, this is the theme of this parsha of Balak. We see unbelievable transformation going on. Now, Ithapcha, from the mystical point of view, is the concept that something very evil, very bad can return to something very good. The ability to take one's Yetzer Hara, for example, and harness it and use its powers for a positive, that would be the power of Ithapcha. Most of us don't get there. Most of us kind of manage maybe to subdue our urges, but not to transform them into something positive. But that's the ultimate, is to take darkness and turn it into light, to take something which is antithetical to godliness and to actually transform that where it actually reveals godliness. And in the refinement of one's own characteristics. So you've got this fight going on between Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, between your good and evil inclinations, the two little proverbial angels that jump around your shoulder and pull you this way or that way. But for some reason, the Yetzer Tov, or the urge to do good, is a meek little guy. And the Yetzer Hara has got plenty of time to go and work out, and he comes there jumping on your shoulder, you flexing the equivalent of muscles, and usually it's pretty tough. If you can get him, this guy, well, that should be him, the left side, right? If you can get him to work for you, for the positive, you get a far more um, powerful energy that you can harness, you can use in a positive way going forward. So that would be the power of itapcha, actually taking something and transforming it. To use the terminology of Chassidut, of Tanya, he talks about the godly soul and the animal soul. And yes, the godly soul, which is part of who we are, is meek. And its interests lie mainly in the intellectual um, and study of Torah. The nefesh habehamit, or the animal soul, that has a power. It's a very emotional being. If you can transform the the nefesh bahamit, the animal soul, to work on your side. You've achieved something tremendous because it's like taking an ox, putting a yoke on it, harnessing it, and that power is tremendous. So that's the concept of itapcha. And where do we see that as a kind of a theme in the portion of Balak? Well, we all know what happens. We all know what happens because that's the concept, the idea of the curses turning to blessings. Described in Devarim, uh, when Hashem didn't want to hear Bilam, and this is Moshe's retrospective on the years in the desert, going all the way up to more recent events, and Moshe says God didn't want to listen to Bilam, and Vayahafoch. He turned around. There's that concept of itapcha. You can see Hefech or Hafoch. This is, of course, a mystical word. It's found in the Zohar, and it's an Aramaic. And this is the Hebrew version, Vayahafoch. He turned around. He took the klala, the curse, and made it into a bracha, turned into a blessing. And that's because of Hashem's love for us. And that's really the theme of the portion. We got people who come with evil intent, and those same people who are coming with evil intent, and they want to harm the Jewish people. It turns out to be something which is positive. And Bilam actually is uttering blessings, some of which we read earlier, the famous Matovu Alecha Yaakov, how good are you tense, Jacob, which is the way we greet when we come into shul. Those are our words that we say when we walk into houses of prayer, although Bilam wasn't talking about houses of prayer, he was talking about the encampment of the Jewish people. On Yom Tov, we say a prayer during Duchening. It's an interesting prayer. And we pray while the Kohanim are there. We've got a few moments while they sing this ay, 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 ay. And if you look in your Siddur Machzor, you will find these very special words. And they are about transforming dreams. So this is a little prayer where we say that I may have dreamt, and I don't know its meaning, but it may be something, negative. So I don't understand its meaning. Therefore, Hashem, whether the dream is about me or children of Israel, whether I dreamt about myself or others dreamt about me or I dreamt about others, whatever it may be, if they're good dreams, let them be. But if, for example, the dreams of Joseph, the righteous, if they require curing, cure them like Hezekiah, king of Judah, healed from his sickness, like Miriam, who was struck with tzaraat, and of course she was healed again. Naaman likewise had tzaraat. The waters of Marah were bitter, and Moshe was able to turn them around and make them sweet. And the same with the waters of Jericho, which Elisha performed the miracle. As you transformed the curse of the wicked, the Bilam, from a curse to a blessing, so may you transform all my dreams regarding myself, regarding all Israel. For goodness, guard me, be gracious to me, and accept me favorably. I mean, this is taken from that prayer, Ribono Shel Olam, which is said whenever we are blessed by the Kohanim on Yomim Tovim. very, very powerful. The theme, of course, is transforming the curse of the wicked Bilam, and likewise is a metaphor for transforming dreams which may be negative into something which is positive. That is the theme of the portion of Balak. And Balak stands for that. Balak stands for that transformative energy. I mean, why did Balak get involved in this? What was he thinking? How did he hope he would come out, in a good way? So Balak, and here's an interesting link with Korach, because Korach saw, kind of visualized his family tree and as a long chain, and he saw that somewhere, down the line there would be something positive coming out of him. Bilam watches, and likewise has a vision of this family tree. We see something very different to what Korach sees. Look at his words. He says to Bilam, please curse these people because they are stronger than me. Atzum mimeni, it's more powerful than me, and therefore, if you curse them, maybe I'll be able to strike them, get them out the land. I know that you're a powerful guy, Bilam. Who you bless is blessed, and who you curse is cursed. These words, atzum hu mimeni, literally it would be, it is mightier than me. It refers to a nation. The nation is mightier than I am. But an alternative translation of this word is Atzumhu, he is strong, mimeni, from me. This nation's strength, because that me can mean than or can mean from. So he's stronger than me, or he's strong from me. What is Bilam talking about when he says he is strong from me? Well, he has a very important role in the prophecy that Bilam utters and that we read together before, which Rambam interprets, talking about Mashiach and about King David. What's Balak got to do with King David and of course Mashiach? We're familiar with the story of Ruth and Boaz. Ruth is a Moabite woman, so there's a connection, of course, with Balak. And Ruth has married the daughter of Nomi, and now their husbands have died. That is Nomi's husbands, Ruth's husbands, and the other daughter-in-law, Orpah, and they return to the Holy Land, and at the last moment, and Nomi manages to convince Orpah that she should go back home, that she doesn't need to, come back to Israel where they're going to live in total poverty because, all of Elimelech, her late husband's properties, have been appropriated, etc. Not a good idea. Orpah listens, and Ruth famously, you people are my people. Where you go, I will go, etc. Look of Ruth, and she comes back, and the story ends with a relative of Elimelech, Naomi's husband, not only redeeming the properties financially, but also redeeming the family name by having a child with Ruth. That's a man called Boaz. And Boaz marries Ruth. And of course, here we go. So Boaz marries Ruth. End of the book of Ruth, chapter 4. At the very end, she becomes his wife. She conceives and she bears a son. And Boaz was an old man already. And he's not even around by the time the child's bris occurs. But the neighbors suggest the name, and they call him Oved. So he is the father of Jesse, who is the father of David. So the son of Boaz is the grandfather of Mashiach. Sorry, the grandfather of King David. And of course, Mashiach is a further descendant there. So that is how Ruth is the great grandmother of King David. And what's that got to do with Moab? Well, here is what the Talmud tells us about Balak. In the merit of the 42 offerings that he brought, which are described actually in this week's parsha, he merited that Ruth descended from him, from whom King Solomon descended, by whom it's written, he brought many offerings, 1,000 burnt offerings that Solomon offered up. Well, if Solomon descends from him, then obviously so is King David, because it's the same line. And Yossi ben Choni says Ruth was the daughter of Eglon, son of Balak. So Ruth is actually a Moabite, and she is the kind of granddaughter, granddaughter of Balak, and Ruth has that a very important role in the future of the Jewish people, and Balak somehow sees that he's a bit of a prophet himself also. That's brought down elsewhere. And Balak realizes that the strength of the Jewish people is from him. That it will be his descendants who will. So of course now we got to try and alter the turn of history, and Balak tries everything possible to be able to win that war over the Jewish people physically, but more importantly in a spiritual sense. So this is what Balak stands for. Balak stands for an unbelievable transformation. A wicked Balak has a granddaughter named Ruth, and she will marry or convert to Judaism. Huge controversy there. And at the end of the book of Ruth is a little bit complex. But basically, there's a prohibition against marrying into Moab, even if there is a 100% genuine conversion. And it turns out that prohibition is only for Jewish women to marry the males of Moab. It is not for men to marry the females of Moab. And of course, that's a law that was clarified, years later. And King David was haunted by this, where many people, pointed at him and said, you are the descendant of a Moabite. It was an illicit marriage. But so is a history that many of the great people that had central roles in the leadership of the Jewish people come from backgrounds that appear murky. And King David, and thus Mashiach ben David, is no exception. So where do we have a portion that is totally about transformation from one extreme to the other? Where do we have the portion that deals with the prophecy about David HaMelech and about a Mashiach to come? Right there in that portion of Balak, whose very name signifies destruction and evil and hatred, but who also appreciates the fact that the worst situation can be turned around to the positive. And of course, it's not going to be him, it will even be his son, it'll be his granddaughter, who will marry to become the mother of royalty, Ruth, who is to us the paragon of a tzaddiket, of a righteous woman, always the model of a true convert to Judaism, who takes the name Ruth very often. That female adherents to our faith take upon themselves, because she is that role model. That is the transformative power of the taking Moab, which signifies total absolute evil, and transforming it into the King David, and ultimately Mashiach and the redemption for the Jewish people. Thank you.